My name is Karen Ibarra. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life running 3 restaurants while doing everything in my power to stay invisible. Not in a sad way, in a strategic one. I like watching people studying them, figuring out who they are long before they realize I'm paying attention. It's a habit I learned growing up as the older daughter who was always responsible, dependable, and largely overlooked. My younger sister Emily is 4 years younger than me, the golden child. Always has been, probably always will be. As kids, I fixed things. She got praised. I helped clean the house. She got a new phone. If she came home late, she was exploring her independence. If I came home late, I lacked discipline. But I never hated her for it. Not really. Emily didn't ask to be the favorite, she just benefited from it. Still, childhood patterns don't disappear when you become adults. They just get dressed in nicer clothes and pretend to be something else. Like how my mom still can't find a single photo of my college graduation, but somehow keeps Emily's framed in the dining room. Or how every holiday conversation turns into a highlight reel of Emily's successes while mine gets summarized as Karen's still doing her restaurant stuff. So when Emily introduced her new boyfriend Carter last Thanksgiving, I honestly didn't think much of it. Just another boyfriend. Another phase. Another person she'd bring home for our parents to adore. But Carter was different. And not in the good way. The moment he stepped through the door, I felt my jaw tighten. He walked into my parents' house like he owned the mortgage. Leather jacket tossed over one shoulder. A smirk so practiced it felt like it should come with a trademark symbol. And the kind of messy hair that takes 20 minutes to achieve. Emily beamed beside him like she'd just brought home a celebrity. He shook hands with everyone. My mom, my dad, my aunt, who was visiting from Portland. Everyone except me. I was standing right next to Emily when she said, "This is my sister Karen." Carter barely glanced at me, just nodded, like I was the caterer. I held out my hand. He gave it the briefest touch, like he was afraid I might infect him with responsibility, then immediately turned back to Emily to whisper something about whether the turkey smelled overly dry. My mom laughed. My dad chuckled. Emily playfully swatted his arm, and I simply walked back into the kitchen and helped my uncle open wine bottles. Quiet, composed, observing. That entire evening, Carter made a sport out of little digs, mostly aimed at me. I'd gotten used to being the understated one, the quiet one, but this was different. This was targeted. He called me Chef Barbie after I mentioned running restaurants, asked if I stood at the cash register or actually cooked, wondered aloud whether flipping pancakes counted as culinary experience. People laughed, even my parents. Emily whispered, "He's joking, don't take it seriously." But the smile on Carter's face told me it wasn't a joke. It was dominance, a test. And if there's one thing about men like Carter, it's that they can't help but reveal themselves. Their ego does the heavy lifting. A few weeks later, Emily invited me to a casual wine tasting she was organizing. She didn't mention it would be at one of my restaurants. She also didn't mention that Carter would be there, or that it wasn't casual at all, but a 15-person dinner. I arrived in my usual outfit, black jeans, black button-down, black boots. My staff gave me nods of recognition. Small smiles, little gestures of respect I didn't need to announce to anyone. Emily had no idea she'd booked my restaurant. The name on the sign outside didn't have my name directly on it, so why would she? She just thought it was a cute place. Carter was already a couple glasses in when I arrived. Loud, animated, leaning back like he was auditioning for a talk show. The only available seat was next to him. Perfect. "Oh, hey!" he called out loudly as I pulled out the chair. "Look who finally decided to show up. You hungry? Maybe Karen can grab us a few slices. She's got that pizza girl energy." Laughter. A couple of awkward glances. Emily's face flushing red. I smiled. Calm. Controlled. "Sure," I said. "Let me take care of that." I pulled out my phone, texted the manager. "Table 9. Send the check. Escort Carter out. Be polite. Tell him the owner requested it." Then I poured myself a glass of wine and waited. Carter kept talking blissfully unaware. 5 minutes later, 2 managers appeared beside him, placed the bill gently in front of him, and said, "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave. The owner has requested it." The table fell silent. Carter blinked, laughed nervously, looked at me, then back at them. "You own this place," he muttered. I took a slow sip of wine, nodding once. "It's the same one you applied to last week," I said. A ripple of shock passed through the table. But here's the thing. That wasn't the moment everything truly began. That was only the spark, the first flicker. Because Carter didn't disappear after that night. No, he doubled down. And Emily, Emily didn't question him. She questioned me. That dinner was just the beginning of a very long, very dangerous slow burn. A fuse had been lit, and the explosion, oh, it was coming, but I didn't rush it, because I had a plan. And Carter had no idea how far down the rabbit hole he was about to fall. Carter didn't explode the night he got escorted out of my restaurant. He didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't even complain. He smirked. He walked out with this exaggerated swagger, like he was auditioning for a role where the character refuses to admit defeat. He even tossed a guess, "I'll take my business elsewhere," over his shoulder like he still held the upper hand. And anyone who's ever dealt with men like Carter knows silence isn't surrender. Silence is strategy. 2 days later, Emily called. Not to apologize, not to check on me, but to defend him. "I just feel like you ambushed him," she said, her voice tight, clipped defensive in a way that told me she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head first. I was standing in one of my kitchens during prep hour. A sous chef was torching creme brulees beside me while I scrubbed a sheet pan on. Instinct, old habits die hard, even when you own the place. I said calmly. He embarrassed himself. I just handed him the mirror. "You set him up." She wasn't backing down. "You knew it was your restaurant. You knew how he gets. You could have pulled him aside. You didn't have to embarrass him." I paused, drying my hands on a towel. "It wasn't a joke, Emily. And you saw that. You felt the room. He wasn't teasing. He was trying to make me look small." Well, she hesitated, then said the line that would echo in my head for hours. It worked. Silence, not awkward cold. I didn't yell. I didn't even sigh. "Wow," I said softly. She rushed in with, "I didn't mean it like that," but the damage was already done, and I realized something I'd been refusing to see. Emily wasn't caught in the middle. Emily was choosing sides. And she wasn't choosing me. But denial is a powerful drug, especially when it comes to family. I kept telling myself she'd come around, that she just didn't see Carter the way I did, that she didn't understand how far he was already pushing boundaries. I wish I had paid attention. I wish I had listened to that first crack in her voice, because things were about to escalate fast. It started with strange calls. "Hey, Karen, just checking in about that renegotiation you mentioned." "What renegotiation? Your brand consultant Carter, right? He said he's updating your vendor strategy. Wanted our pricing breakdown." My stomach dropped. A week later. "Got your email, Karen, sending that wine shipment to the address Carter provided." "I didn't send any email," I said slowly. "What?" "It was signed by you." He'd used my name. He was forging requests. He was slipping into my business like a parasite, hoping I'd be too busy to notice. Emily, meanwhile, acted like everything was normal. She brought Carter to Sunday dinner as if nothing had happened. My parents fawned over him like he was a visiting diplomat. "He's ambitious," my father said when I tried mentioning the fake emails. "He's just trying to help your image," my mom insisted. "Maybe you're being too territorial." That word again, territorial. Amazing how when a man protects what he's built, he's called authoritative. When a woman does it, she's territorial. I looked at my father that night and suddenly saw a stranger. This was the same man who grounded me for 3 days when Emily failed a school project and blamed me for not helping enough. But now the rules were different. I stopped trying to explain. They weren't listening. They had decided Carter was the go-getter they'd always wanted for Emily. 2 months later, Emily sent out a group email inviting the whole family to brunch. "At my restaurant," without asking. She even wrote, "It'll be great exposure for Karen." Exposure. Like I was some struggling Etsy shop owner hoping for clicks. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded the reservation to my general manager and told him to staff a team, but not to reveal I was the owner. I arrived 5 minutes early and waited outside. Carter strutted into the restaurant like he paid the mortgage. One hand on Emily's back, the other gesturing broadly at my decor, my lighting, my floors, my team, like he'd built every inch of it with his bare hands. The family arrived in waves. My mother admired the plaster walls. My aunt said, "This place feels fancy. Whoever owns it must be doing well." Carter just smiled smug in a way that made my skin crawl. I slipped in through the side entrance and watched from the shadows near the bar. That's when I heard Carter's voice ring out, "Everyone, can I have your attention?" He stood at the head of the table, glass of champagne in hand, Emily glowing proudly beside him. "To new beginnings," he said, lifting his glass, "and to partnerships built on trust, vision, and good taste." I felt my stomach turn. Then the kicker. He started talking about launching a food brand, about his exclusive involvement with my restaurants, about a ghost kitchen project he was leading with a top-tier restaurateur. And then Emily stood up, giggling with excitement. We're thrilled, she said, to announce that Carter will be leading our very first pop-up dining series right here at Karen's restaurant. My general manager's eyes shot across the room toward me. He looked like someone had poured ice water down his spine. I walked out before the applause ended. I needed air, space. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was loud, public, and worst of all, joint. Emily wasn't just defending Carter. She was participating. Later that night, I called her. I want you to tell me the truth, I said. Did you tell people Carter was working with my restaurant? A long silence. Finally, it's not what you think. That's not an answer. She sighed. He just wanted a chance. He has ideas, Karen. Real potential. I thought maybe. So you let him use my business to sell a fantasy? Why are you overreacting? I laughed. Bitter. Disbelieving. Emily, you let your boyfriend fake a partnership with my business in front of our entire family, in a restaurant I own. She hesitated. He said he'd talk to you after, she whispered. That was the moment I realized something painful. Emily didn't respect what I'd built. She didn't see the years I'd spent grinding, sacrificing, rebuilding. To her, my restaurants were just a shiny prop to help her boyfriend look impressive. And she wasn't done. Because 1 week later, I received a letter from the city planning office, a liquor license transfer request, submitted under my business name, signed by Carter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't surprised. I was hollow. For the first time, I realized just how deep this rabbit hole went, and how far I would need to go to stop it. I didn't sleep the night I saw Carter's name on that liquor license application. Not even for a minute. I just sat on the edge of my bed with my hands clasped together, staring into the dark like the shadows might offer some explanation. For the first time in years, I felt like the girl I used to be, the older daughter who had to hold the house together while the golden child twirled in the spotlight. The one who learned that silence keeps the peace and responsibility is rewarded with more responsibility, not praise. I'd built a life meant to protect me from ever feeling that small again. Quiet, structured, strategic. But somehow Carter had dragged me right back to the place I thought I'd escaped. And worse, Emily helped him. That was the part that hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. They say betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the people you would have protected, the ones you trusted. The ones you still want to trust, even as they step onto your throat. Emily used to sleep in my room during thunderstorms. She used to slip her cold feet under my blanket and whisper, "Don't tell Mom," even though Mom wouldn't have cared. We shared headphones on long car rides and sang the same 5 songs until the battery died. And now, she was helping a con man dismantle my entire identity. Not because she was cruel, because she wanted so badly to believe she had chosen someone worthy of her love that she ignored every alarm bell ringing around her. For 2 days, I shut the world out. No calls, no texts, not even a message to my managers. I told them I was sick. And I was, not in a way medicine could fix. I didn't cry, but I felt something heavier than tears, like a weight lodged behind my ribs that made breathing feel like work, like grief. On day 3, I finally dragged myself into Ember Row. I didn't dress the part. No neat bun, no pressed shirt, no clean black apron. I threw on an old hoodie and tied my hair into a messy bun. The staff looked at me like I was a ghost wearing my skin. I walked past them, nodded, and locked myself in my office. The invoices on my desk blurred together. The hum of the refrigerator in the hallway sounded like static. I felt cracked, not broken, but dangerously close. Hours passed before I finally picked up a pen. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to disappear. But I needed to anchor myself before I sank. The next week was a blur. I showed up for shifts, I managed inventory, I answered questions, I even smiled when I had to. But inside I was running on fumes. Emily didn't call. Carter didn't either. My parents acted like nothing had happened at brunch, like Carter's fabricated pop-up announcement was a charming misunderstanding rather than a public exploitation of my business. Then something strange, something small, something that shouldn't have mattered but did. A woman walked into Ember Row one afternoon while I was walking the floor. She looked familiar, a short gray bob, warm eyes, confident posture. She waved me over. "Karen Wright," she asked. I nodded. "Yes. Hi. You probably don't remember me," she said with a smile. "I'm Margot. You catered my husband's retirement party last spring." And suddenly I did remember. 40 guests, seafood-heavy menu, long night but smooth. One of the few events where everything went right. I remember I said, "That was a great evening." She nodded warmly. "I've been to many events since then, but none of them felt like that one. You made it special. I wanted you to know that." I blinked. Compliments usually slide off me, but that one lodged somewhere soft. "Thank you," I said. "It means a lot." Then she leaned in, voice low. "Don't let noise shake you," she said. "Some people can't stand to see others build things." And then she walked away. She didn't know what I was going through. She hadn't heard anything. But somehow, she saw me. And that was the moment something shifted. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and started writing. Not strategy, not retaliation, just memories. Why I started the business, what it meant to me. Moments no one saw but shaped everything. The Christmas Eve, I cooked for a single mother and her 2 kids. Their car broke down outside the restaurant, and we kept the ovens on for them. The line cook, who broke down in the walk-in because he couldn't afford diapers, I gave him a raise the next week. The time I rewrote a menu at 3 a.m. because a bride with a rare allergy wanted to host her wedding dinner with us. These moments were mine, not performative, not embellished, real. Carter could steal my name, my branding, my family's impression of me, but he would never understand the heart of what I built. And that was the difference between us. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I filed a cease and desist against Carter for impersonation, misrepresentation, and attempted fraud. The paper trail was solid emails, vendor reports, the city application. Then I contacted the licensing board and flagged all applications tied to my businesses. But I wasn't done. I gathered my managers, 8 people who had been with me from the early days, some from the beginning. For the first time in years, I opened up. I told them someone close to me had tried to exploit what we built, that I had taken the hit emotionally, but I wasn't folding. I expected awkward silence. Instead, Louise, my longtime sous chef, spoke up. "We've got your back, Karen." Simple, steady, stronger than any speech I could have written. Their loyalty wasn't loud, it was rooted, and it held me up when my family didn't. Over the next few weeks, I quietly rebuilt. I revamped the Ember Row website, updated the brand story, posted a letter from the owner about our values and journey, honest, vulnerable, surprisingly healing to write. I hosted a staff dinner, cooked for the team for the first time in months. They cheered when I dropped a pepper shaker into the sauce. It felt human again. Then came the industry whispers. Vendors started calling not to warn me about Carter, but to laugh. Apparently word was spreading. He tried pitching a pop-up partnership to another restaurant group. He claimed my parent company backed him. They rejected him. They also labeled him shady. His reputation wasn't just cracking, it was eroding. And me, I was resurfacing. But I still hadn't spoken to Emily, until the day she walked into Ember Table unannounced. During lunch rush, she sat at a corner table, twisting a napkin in her hands like a nervous child. My hostess whispered, your sister is here." I walked over slowly. Emily stood when she saw me. Her eyes were glassy, not angry, not defensive. "Scared, Karen," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I looked at her, the girl who once hid under my blankets during storms, who became the woman who helped tear apart my world without even realizing it. I pulled out the chair, sat down, said nothing. Because this wasn't an ending. This was the beginning of the reckoning, and Emily had no idea how deep the damage really ran. Emily sat across from me at that corner booth, like someone waiting for a verdict, not a conversation. Her hands were twisting the napkin so tightly it looked like it might tear. "I didn't know he filed those papers," she said, finally, her voice cracking. "The liquor license thing, I swear, Karen, I didn't." I studied her face. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't innocent either. "You didn't know about the application," I said slowly, "but the brunch announcement, the fake pop-up, the speech he made with my branding, you stood next to him and smiled." She winced like each example was a slap. "I just thought it was real," she whispered. "He made it sound like you two were already working together. I guess I wanted to believe it." Why, I asked, and it wasn't an accusation, it was honest confusion. Why would you ever think I'd work with someone who disrespected me from day one? Emily's eyes brimmed resentment and regret warring behind them. "Because you always make me feel like I'm beneath you," she said, her voice trembling. "Like you don't trust me. Like I'm just your little sister who never gets anything right. Carter made me feel like I actually understood business, like I could be part of something." Her honesty hit like a punch. I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't trust myself to say anything fair. She wiped her eyes. "What are you going to do to him?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why do you think I'm doing anything?" "Because I know you," she whispered. "You don't yell Karen. You don't explode. You plan." She wasn't wrong. I'd been planning since the moment Carter's name hit my licensing paperwork. But her question made something shift. This wasn't fear for Carter. It was fear of what I might turn into. I didn't answer her then, because the truth was simple. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking correction. What Carter did wasn't an attack. It was a theft, a hijacking of my life's work, my reputation, my family's perception of me. Justice wasn't a choice, it was a responsibility, and it was time to act. The next morning, I called Luis. Luis had been my right hand in the kitchen for years, steady, sharp calm in chaos. The kind of person you trust with the truth, even when it's ugly. We met in my office before the dinner rush. I laid out everything, the fake emails, the forged application, the vendor calls, the brunch stunt, all of it. He's not just sloppy, Luis said after a long silence. He's dangerous. I nodded. Then he asked the question that set the entire plan in motion. How far do you want to go? I didn't blink. All the way. He sat back, folded his arms, and nodded once. Then we start at the source, he said. Inside. And we did. Phase 1, the network trap. We created a shell consulting brand, Hollow and Lane Hospitality, polished professional corporate, enough to be believable. I designed the logo myself. Clean typography, muted colors, the kind of aesthetic predators like Carter salivate over. Luis sent the email. We're scouting promising entrepreneurs in the culinary space. Your portfolio has been recommended to us by several industry contacts. We'd like to discuss a possible placement in our incubator program. We highlighted the bait, $75,000 proof of concept funding, and 3 months of fully equipped kitchen space. Within 24 hours, Carter responded with a pitch deck. Possibly the funniest document I've ever seen in my life. 6 slides of buzzwords, stolen images, and claims that would make a used car salesman blush. He had even photoshopped the Ember Row logo onto images of dishes we'd never served. Luis and I stared at the deck in stunned silence. Is he serious? Luis whispered. Oh, very, I said. The follow-up call was even better recorded, of course. Carter bragged that he had an ongoing strategic partnership with my restaurants, full access to my supplier network, a silent collaboration with me personally, and Emily as his bridge to operations and branding. Every sentence was a noose. Phase 2, the mirror room. We invited Carter to a soft pitch session. We rented a downtown loft through one of my restaurant regulars, dim lighting, minimalist decor, folding chairs, arranged like a TED Talk. Luis played the host. I watched through a hidden camera feed. Carter arrived early wearing a blazer that tried too hard and loafers that squeaked with every step. He carried a binder stuffed with stolen logos, plagiarized menus, and a mock business plan. Luis opened with, "Tell me about your team," and Carter blossomed. He named people he'd never met, claimed I was hands-off but visionary, said I trusted his instincts, talked about pop-ups in New York, Chicago, Austin. Luis never interrupted. He didn't need to. Carter's mouth was the shovel he was using to dig his own grave. When Luis asked for photos of past events, Carter froze, muttering something about NDAs and exclusive clients. We ended the session politely. Carter left believing he was one step away from being discovered. He had no idea what was coming. Phase 3. The internal reveal. The truth had to come home before it went public. I closed Ember Row early one night for a private staff meeting. We served a simple dinner, family meal. Style, long table, soft lighting, warm food. I stood up after dessert and thanked everyone for their loyalty, especially these past weeks. Then I played the audio from Carter's pitch call. The room went silent, forks lowered, eyes hardened. By the end, there wasn't a single person in that room who had any doubts about who he was or who I was. We purged Carter's name from every vendor contact sheet, internal email list, and file. We sent a mass clarification email to every supplier, distributor, and partner. Carter Brannigan is not affiliated with Ember Row, Ember Table, or any entity owned by Karen Ibarra. Any attempt by him to represent our brand is fraudulent and unauthorized. Then I forwarded everything to my lawyer and the city licensing board. An investigation opened immediately. And still I wasn't done. Because Emily needed to hear the truth from me, not from rumors. I called her. When she answered, her voice was small. "You're really doing this," she whispered. "I have to," I said. He crossed every line. "And what about me?" Her voice cracked. I paused, and that pause said everything. Because I didn't know yet what to do about her. But I did know one thing. Carter's world was about to collapse. And the final blow, he would never see it coming. I waited 3 full weeks before making the final move. Not because I needed time. Everything was already in place. Evidence, witnesses, documentation, legal backing. I waited because people like Carter burn themselves more efficiently than any enemy ever could. His downfall didn't need my hands, it just needed my timing. And the timing arrived on a silver platter. The licensing board contacted my lawyer. They had flagged Carter not only for the forged liquor license tied to my business, but for multiple other attempts under different shell names. "He's been applying all over the city," my lawyer said. This was the final straw. By the end of that week, Carter was officially blacklisted from applying for any food or alcohol licensing for the next 5 years. His career, whatever flimsy scaffolding it was built on, collapsed overnight. But that wasn't the real lesson. That wasn't the moment he understood what he'd done. No, the real lesson needed witnesses. Emily called a few days later, her voice bright in a way that felt artificial. Carter booked a huge pitch event at this co-working space uptown, she said. He invited investors, brand partners. This could be his breakthrough. Breakthrough. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, tell him I said good luck. She softened. Really, really. She thought it was support, but it was permission. Because the co-working space she mentioned was owned by my regular customer, a real estate developer named Cole Langston. Cole is a quiet man, mid-40s, all calm, confidence, and immaculate suits. He owns half the buildings in our district and drinks his coffee black with a single sugar cube. I texted him, need a favor, 30 minutes of cooperation. Tonight, you in. He responded in 8 seconds. Small room or whole floor? I stared at the screen, and then I smiled. Whole floor. The night of Carter's grand pitch arrived, like the opening act of a play he didn't realize he wasn't starring in. He wore a gray blazer too shiny for the lighting and loafers that clicked dramatically against the polished floor. Emily walked behind him holding a notebook like she was his executive assistant. The co-working floor was set up exactly how Carter requested. 30 chairs arranged in neat rows, a projection screen, water pitchers, a table for investor packets. What he didn't know, half the people attending were there because I invited them. Restaurant owners, vendor reps, a couple of investors I trusted. The rest were employees from Cole's companies planted to fill seats, witness everything, and ensure the scene unfolded exactly as planned. I waited behind the divider wall unseen. Carter stepped forward, cleared his throat dramatically, and began. Welcome, everyone. My name is Carter Brannigan, and I'm the founder of Ember Concepts, a new partnership extension of Ember Row and Ember Table. I stepped forward and killed the lights. Gasps rippled through the room. Then the projector turned on. Not with Carter's presentation, but with a white slide bearing bold black text. This man is not affiliated with Ember Row, Ember Table, or any entity owned by Karen Ibarra. Silence. Then the next slide appeared. Screenshots of Carter's fake emails, his forged vendor requests, excerpts from his pitch recordings, and a watermark from Hollow and Lane Hospitality. The room murmured low, dangerous, like the moment before a storm breaks. I stepped into the light. Emily's face drained of color. Carter looked like someone had yanked his soul out through his throat. Hi, Carter, I said calmly, microphone in hand. Thought I'd stop by, seeing as you're using my name and all. This isn't Karen, this is a misunderstanding, he stammered. No need to explain, I said, moving closer. We've got your slides right here. Another click. The audio from his pitch call played over the speaker. Karen's hands off, but she trusts my strategic instincts. A man in the back burst into laughter. Carter's face twitched. I nodded toward the table. I brought something for you. I handed him a sealed envelope. Cease and desist. Fraud, misrepresentation, attempted interference with business relationships. I paused. Your little project is over. People whispered. Some chuckled. Several shook their heads. And I added, turning toward the audience, if any investor here gave this man money under the assumption he represents my brand, I will personally help you begin legal recovery procedures tomorrow morning. A beat of stunned silence. Carter didn't move. Emily. Emily didn't yell, didn't defend him, didn't even look at either of us. She grabbed her coat and walked out. Not with anger, with shame and grief. I didn't follow. The lesson wasn't for her, not tonight. Tonight was Carter's. The aftermath unfolded exactly as expected. Carter sent angry emails for a week accusing me of slander-threatening lawsuits demanding apologies. My lawyer responded to each one with a time-stamped document, a polite counterclaim, and a reminder that he was free to take it to court. He never did. He couldn't. He had no grounds. He had no money. He had no remaining allies. 2 of the investors he scammed filed complaints of their own. 1 sought restitution. His reputation didn't just crumble, it disintegrated. He moved out of Emily's apartment a month later. She didn't tell me directly, but word travels. She had finally seen the emails, all of them. The forged documents, the lies he'd told her, the way he weaponized her love against me. And it broke something in her. I didn't comfort her, not because I didn't care, but because wounds only heal when exposed to air, not when covered with excuses. Months later, Emily reached out. Can we talk? She asked. Her voice was small, stripped of all the bright confidence she used to wear like a favorite sweater. We met at a cafe. She looked different, tired, humbled, older. I didn't know how bad it really was, she whispered. I wanted to believe in him. I ignored every sign. I thought you were just dismissive, controlling. I didn't think he'd lie to me. You weren't the only one, I said. Her eyes filled. I'm sorry, Karen, for everything. I didn't rush to forgive. You should be, I said softly. That hurt. She nodded. I'll earn it back. Her voice cracked. If you let me. I'm not promising anything, I said. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A slow one. A necessary one. Life moved forward. The scandal ironically brought more eyes to my restaurants than any marketing campaign ever had. People love a story. And this one had betrayal, family drama, a con man exposed, a woman reclaiming her voice. One food industry blog ran a headline, How a Restaurant Owner Outsmarted a Con Artist with His Own Ego. It felt good. But what felt better was this. I didn't scream, I didn't crumble, I didn't beg for validation. I built the truth brick by brick. And when the moment came, I let it speak for itself. People like Carter live in mirrors. They need reflection to survive. But eventually, the mirror cracks. And when it does, they're the only ones who can't bear to look. For a long time after everything with Carter ended, I caught myself looking over my shoulder, not out of fear, but out of habit. When someone tries to hijack your life, your identity, your reputation, you don't just snap back into who you were. You rebuild, slowly, deliberately, brick by careful brick. And that rebuilding doesn't happen in a boardroom or a courtroom. It happens in the quiet moments. Like the first time I walked into Ember Row and didn't feel hollow, or the night my sous chef Luis handed me a new sauce he'd been working on and said, "Thought you might want to be the first to try this." Or the morning I woke up before my alarm because for the first time in months I was actually excited to go to work. Healing doesn't arrive with fanfare, it arrives quietly. The same way pain does. People ask me if I forgave Emily. Forgiveness is a complicated word. It's not a key. You turn all at once. It's a lock that picks itself slowly, each click a moment, a conversation, a choice. Emily and I began meeting every few weeks. Nothing heavy at first, not apologies, not accusations, just two sisters sharing coffee in small cafes, or walking along familiar sidewalks, trying to find ourselves again in a world that had shifted underneath us. For a long time, she didn't bring up Carter, and I didn't either. One evening, months later, she finally asked, "Do you hate me?" I took a breath. The truth was simple but heavy. "No," I said. "But I don't trust easily, and trust takes time." She nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "I want to be worthy of it," she whispered. And I realized then that growth doesn't only happen in the person who's hurt. It happens in the person who caused the hurt too, if they're willing. We weren't who we used to be, but maybe we could become something better. Not sisters defined by favoritism or comparison, but sisters defined by honesty. Business took on a new rhythm. My restaurants were busier than ever, not because people wanted drama, but because they wanted authenticity. They wanted spaces that felt real, human, grounded. I updated the menus, working late into the night again, not because I had to, but because I enjoyed it. The kitchen felt like home again. The staff began leaning on me in the familiar ways they always had before I withdrew into stress. One night during closing, Luis turned to me, wiping his hands on his apron. "You're back," he said. I blinked. I didn't know I left. He gave me a knowing look. "Yeah, you did, but you're back now." It was one of those small, quiet validations you don't realize you needed until it's given to you. I'd spent months thinking about Carter, how he almost stole everything. How he manipulated Emily, how he slithered into cracks I didn't know existed. But at some point, the anger fades and what remains is clarity. Carter wasn't the storm. He was the wind that forced the storm out of hiding. He revealed weaknesses I needed to see. He exposed dynamics with my family that needed to be addressed. He reminded me that boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. And only I decide who enters. Without meaning to, Carter showed me what I'd been avoiding for years. I'd built an empire, yes, but I'd forgotten to defend its emotional borders. And now I never forget. A year after everything ended, Emily and I attended our cousin's wedding together. It was the first family event where we weren't tiptoeing around each other. At one point during the reception, she leaned toward me and said softly, "I'm proud of you, you know. You did everything I couldn't see before." I looked out at the dance floor, watching our relatives spin in circles to old music. "I'm proud of you too," I said. "You left someone who made you smaller. That's not easy." She smiled, a real one, the kind she used to have before everything went sideways. Our parents still struggled to understand everything that happened. They still defaulted to seeing Emily as fragile and me as unshakable, but I didn't carry resentment anymore. Some people grow up before others, and some don't grow unless they're forced to. We were all growing, just in different directions at different speeds, and that was okay. As for Carter, he faded into the background noise of the industry whispers in conference halls, cautionary tales told over cheap drinks, a ghost orbiting circles he used to think he dominated. People like him burn out eventually, not because someone stops them, but because there's nothing inside them left to burn. His story ended. Mine didn't. Some nights after closing, I stand alone in one of my dining rooms. The lights are low, the chairs are stacked, the air smells faintly of rosemary and citrus, and I think about everything that happened not with fear or bitterness, but with a strange kind of gratitude. Because surviving that fire didn't just prove something, it transformed something. My boundaries became clearer, my relationships became sharper, my leadership became stronger. And I became someone who no longer apologizes for protecting what she built. Not the rooms, not the menus, not the brand. Me. Because at the end of the day, restaurants can be rebuilt. Reputations can be restored. Families can find their way back. But self-respect, that's the one thing you defend until the last brick falls. And I will defend mine always.